So I finally managed to track down one of these things here, and it's an Easy Flash 4 flash cart for your Game Boy Advance. And this is sort of similar to the flash carts you get for the Nintendo DS, the likes of your Ace card or R4. And these have a little built-in memory card slot, so you can fill up your memory card with all your ROMs and your software or whatever, and then play them on your console. So this is quite similar. It's got a mini SD card slot on the side. I've actually used an adapter so I can fit a micro SD card slot into it. But yeah, you just put all your ROMs and your software on that, and then you can actually play the games on the real hardware. There's no emulation involved. It's literally playing the real game on the real hardware. So there's no graphical glitches or slowdown or any of that kind of stuff. So yeah, really nice little device to have, and this will work with pretty much all the variations of Game Boy Advance. It'll work with the original Game Boy Advance, it'll work with the Micro, it'll work with the SP, it'll even work with the DS Lite and the Game Boy player for the GameCube, but I'll show you those in action a little later in the video. The only thing I couldn't get this to work with was my clone Game Boy Advance here, the Game Box. But this has a built-in SD card slot anyway for putting your ROMs on, so why you'd want to use one of these on this doesn't really make much sense anyway. So, and this isn't a real Game Boy Advance really anyway, it's basically just an emulator. But yeah, it doesn't work with the clone system for one reason or another. But what I'll do is I'll quickly show you how to transfer the files onto the memory card using the software on the PC. And then I'll give you a quick demonstration of this thing in action. So to get the games onto your memory card, you need to use this piece of software here, and unfortunately you can't just drag and drop the ROMs onto your memory card. They need to be patched first, but you use this piece of software called the Easy4 client. Really easy to use. You just open up the folder with your ROMs, choose the one you want, open that, and then you've got a couple of options here just to patch the ROM for the save game or the reset option. And that basically just allows you to jump back to the flashcard menu at any point during the game by pressing a certain button combination, so it's quite handy to have. From there you just send it over, it'll transfer it onto the memory card for you, and then plug it back into the flash card and you can play your games. So really easy to use. The only thing you can't do with the flash card is transfer over Game Boy or Game Boy Color ROMs. The Game Boy Advance won't recognise them, but that's more a limitation of the Game Boy Advance hardware than the flash card. So you can get around that by using an emulator called Goomba, I think it's called. You can use that to play Game Boy and Game Boy Color games, but the games I've tried so far are not very good. It kind of has a lot of slowdown and graphical glitches, so it's not really a workable option. But yeah, for transferring your Game Boy Advance ROMs over, you use this piece of software here, which is not ideal, but I mean it takes 2 seconds, so it's not a big deal. So I'll give you a quick demonstration of the cart in action here, and you just plug it in the same as you would a regular game. Turn on the console. Sorry about any glare you're going to get off this, it's quite difficult to film these. And you'll notice it quickly asks me to hold down the L button there, and that's just to skip over a feature where I think it tries to load the previous game's save into memory. I think that's just to save time, I'm not too sure, but if you hold down the L button you can skip over that. So here you're presented with the menu screen, and you can change this, you can change it to something different if you wanted. It comes pre-installed with a really horrible Star Wars one that's quite difficult to read. So I changed it to this nice sort of plain one here, but you can change it if you want. There's a few options available to you. The first one down here is help, FAQs, setup, configuration. Basically you can change the language and the way it saves the games. You've got a built-in game, Minesweeper, bookmarks, and this is the main feature here where you can browse your memory card where you've got your games. So here you can see there's a folder for your save games. It does save the games for you, which is a really nice feature of the card. Here you can see the games I've already installed in this. So you've got Klonoa and Metroid and Ninja 5 Super Mario Brothers, Contra. And the really nice thing about this device is you're playing the game on the real hardware, so there's no emulation involved, there's no slowdown, no graphical glitches. It all plays perfectly. I've not found a single game yet that I've had any problems with. On other devices like that clone system I've got, you'll find that you get slowdown and all kinds of problems, but with this Flashcart, none of that at all. Everything plays perfectly and as it should. So yeah, I highly recommend one of these if you want to play Game Boy Advance games without any kind of glitches or slowdown, that sort of thing. But what I'll do is I'll quickly show you a game in action here. I'll show you a quick game of Klonoa. So you select the game and then it'll load it into memory, and the system should appear to reboot. And it should start up. Again, sorry for the glare, there's on the reflection, it's quite difficult to film these. So there you go. The game starts up as if it was a real card that was, our cartridge that was in the system. So hit start, and I can either select a new game or continue the game I was playing previously, which I'll do. Select that, and there we go. No slowdown, everything works as it should. I'm not very good at this game. So there you go. And if you want to go back to the menu again, what you can do is there's a button combination you can press, but I think it's holding down the left trigger up and the two face buttons here. Let's see if that works. Yep. So there you go, you can go back to the menu from the game, you don't need to reboot the system, and I can select another game to play. What will I choose now? Let's go for a bit of this here. But yeah, as I was saying, plays the games perfectly, no slowdown or any of that kind of thing. You can't play, the only thing you can't do with this is play Game Boy Color or Game Boy games. That's more a limitation of the hardware. When you plug in a Game Boy Advance cartridge, the Game Boy Advance actually sees it as a Game Boy Advance cartridge as opposed to a Game Boy game. I think if you were to play Game Boy games on this, you'd need some sort of manual switch on it to trick the system into thinking it was a different type of cartridge. It's not really a fault of the Flashcart, it's more a limitation of the hardware. To play Game Boy Color and Game Boy original games, you need one of these things here. This is a similar idea. It's a Flashcart for the Game Boy Color, Game Boy original Game Boy, and this has a little USB port on the top. I'll probably end up doing a video on this at some point. I've only recently just got this, so I'm just still trying to get my head around how it all works. I've got a couple of games installed in that, but yeah, that's what you'd need if you're wanting to play Game Boy Color games. So this won't play your Game Boy games, it'll only play your Game Boy Advance games. But there you go, you can see it's playing the games perfectly. Really great little device, I'm very happy with it. So what I'll do is I'll quickly show you it running on some of the other versions of Game Boy Advance. I'll just do some editing here to show you that. So here it's running on the Nintendo DS Lite. It works fine. And the Game Boy Micro. And finally the original Game Boy Advance, which doesn't have a backlit screen, so it's quite difficult to see, but it does work. There you go. So a quick word on piracy and downloading ROMs and all the controversy that these things generally tend to kick up. For me personally, I don't see any problem with downloading a ROM and playing on an emulator or even a flash cart like this here. If the system is no longer in production, it's no longer supported, then it doesn't really make any difference whether you download the ROM or you go out and buy the game second hand from eBay or a thrift store or whatever. The developers already made their money from the game back in the day when it was released, so it doesn't make any difference to them whether you download the game and play it for free or not. Yes, there will be people that complain and go, well, you can buy a 360 or a PlayStation 3 or a Wii or a 3DS, and if the game's been re-released on one of their downloadable content type services like PlayStation Network or Marketplace or the eShop, you could download it, pay for it, and play it on one of those systems. But the thing is with that, maybe you don't own one of those systems, you already own the original hardware, and you don't want to play it emulated on one of the newer systems. You want to play the real game on the real hardware, like this here. So I want to play a Game Boy Advance game, I want to play it on the actual Game Boy Advance. So that would be my argument towards that. Maybe you don't even own one of the new systems and you just want to play it on the original hardware. One of these is a great way of getting around that. There are plenty of other legitimate reasons for owning one of these as well. There's homebrew, there's backing up all the games that you do legitimately own, and just, not that it matters, but I actually own loads of Game Boy Advance games here. I still buy them, I still collect for the system. It's not as if picking this thing up is going to mean that I'm never going to buy another Game Boy Advance game. If anything, I'll probably buy more because I'll be able to test out games that I've heard about, and I'll see if they're worth actually picking up or not. I'm not going to lie and say that every game I download onto this thing I'm going to end up buying. I mean, there's games like Ninja Cop or Ninja 5 or whatever it's called. If I wanted to buy a legitimate copy of that on eBay, second hand, remember, the developer's not getting any money for this, I'd have to pay about £100, $150 to play that game. And I've got the game on here, I've tried it, and I can tell you right now it's definitely not worth $100, $150 to own that game, to play it. It's a good game, but it's not worth that kind of money. Yes, it'd be worth that kind of money to a collector who actually wants the real copy in their collection, but for me, no. I would rather just play the ROM on a device like this here. But that's just my opinion. It's probably a whole other video to go into about the legality and the how ethical it is to download a ROM and play it on a PC emulator or whatever. But yeah, my opinion. So I thought I should just add that in the end there, because there's always people that complain about these things and get quite upset about them. So yeah, the legality of it is going to change depending on where you are in the world, so I'm not even going to touch on that subject. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you again soon.